What's the creepiest thing you've seen but no one believes you? Part 3. My story starts when I was roughly 8. My parents bought an old farmhouse that's over 100 years old. We found newspaper clippings in the wall when they removed it from 1864. I had 2 brothers at the time, and we were all outside playing, and they had a tendency to pick on me, so I decided I was done putting up with it and went in the house to tattle, as 8-year-olds do. I yelled several times for my mum and finally got back, "What is it, dear?" Not seeing her, I yell, "Where are you?" Again I hear a voice, "I'm over here, dear." I don't see her and call out again. This repeats about 4 times, and as I get closer and the voice gets louder, I passed by a window and glanced out to see my mum and dad out in the distance working on a tractor. My heart jumps into my throat and I book it outside. My brothers are exactly where they were when I went in, so I know it's not one of them messing with me. Throughout the years, I hear voices and TVs and strange noises constantly throughout the house, but just assume I'm hearing things. Move up a bit to me being 17. Parents left town for a few days and I had some friends come over. Night starts off normal, we play some video games and all is well. 2 of my friends need to use the bathroom, so one goes downstairs and one stays upstairs since there's 2 bathrooms in the house. First friend comes back from the bathroom and says, Yeah, really funny guys, to the 3 of us that are in that room. We have no idea what he's talking about. He said, banging on the door and making weird sounds while I'm taking a piss. So funny. We're all genuinely confused as we haven't moved. He doesn't believe us but sits down and rejoins the group. Now the second friend comes back from the downstairs and has a similar complaint. He says we were bouncing a ball, shuffling things around, laughing outside the door, and heard us run off when the toilet flushed. We, again, are confused, especially since there weren't enough of us to mess with both of them at the same time. Conversation kinda drops, but neither seem convinced we did nothing. A couple hours go by and for some reason the conversation comes up again. We deny it, they don't believe it. Eventually, that turns into jokes about a ghost and how we disturbed them when the house was remodeled. I was about 13 when we started remodeling. Jokes continue and someone says, come on now, you can't really believe that ghosts exist. And everyone's like, nah, they probably don't. On the other side of the room is a single fold closet door, and right as we said that, this door explodes open so violently that the folds slam together and bounce almost back shut. We immediately end that conversation, flip every light in the house on, and no one dared to touch the door. The next day, I wanted to make sure something didn't fall, but as I open the door, there's nothing close to the door and nothing big enough that could have fallen to slam the door open. Move forward to me being 20 and telling my mum of the weird things that I witnessed. She tells me, I know there's at least a family of 3 that I know of. 2 little boys, one always has a bouncing ball and the other giggles a lot, and an old man. I hadn't even gotten to that part in my story. Footsteps and banging in my attic. For about 2 months, almost every night, I would hear from my attic. The steps are only like 5 feet from my room. Small taps or footsteps. Then, it gradually got louder, to the point it sounded like an audible foot was pressing on the wood. I told my dad and he told me it was probably an animal that got up there or something. Thing is, my sister heard it too, as her bedroom was in the same hallway as mine. My dad might have been right, as it was completely gone after 2 to 3 months, and right now at 2 a.m. I don't hear it. And I swear to God, if I hear it after this post, I'm actually going to piss my pants. Backstory, you'll need it. I grew up in a small California desert tourist town called Joshua Tree, home of the Joshua Tree National Park. Those of us that are older call it the Monument, as it was that before National Parkdom. I was in my early 20s at this time, which was approximately 14 years ago, and was the only one with a car and a license. Growing up in a small desert town leaves you with limited options for fun, and we would make use of the park. Occasionally, maybe once a week, a group of us would pile into the station wagon with beer, smokes, and a mixtape and drive through the park late at night. An empty road, so dark and quiet, other than the loud group of guys in a red Mercury driving fast from one entrance to the other. Hours would go by each time as we drove the long, desolate road and stopped at various rocks we liked to climb. And I can't understate how desolate it was, how alone. No other cars, no lights. except the occasional roadwork sign when warranted. Hell, that was exactly what we thought it was. This trip started like every other, except maybe more of us than usual. Crammed in that car, windows down, as I chain smoked and drove a good 20 miles over the speed limit, gravel spitting up as we had a good time. Shortly into the trip, I saw a light, a blue light, possibly, and it was miles and miles ahead. This is that thing about the dark, light is free to shine. I remember saying something about having to slow down at some point ahead, must be some road construction left by itself up ahead, had to be a sign. The light hadn't moved. We continued for a few miles to one of our favourite stops and got out. We climbed for a while, maybe 45 minutes or so, drank a little, joked, the norm. Then we piled back in and continued. Let me be clear, this light never moved, and we had already been about an hour or so into our adventure. Why would the sign have a blue light? As we approached the light, I started to slow, and maybe more and more as we approached the source. It wasn't a sign. It wasn't a car. It wasn't a UFO. Standing on the side of the road, facing towards us, unmoving for over an hour at this point, was a man. A pale white man, white beard, dirty old miner clothing, with an old mining helmet and a pickaxe. His light giving off an unnaturally blue tint. His face blank, but he stared at us, directly at all of us. We sped up as we drove by faster, his head turning to keep pace as we left. His light visible, unmoving once again, facing us the entire trip out. I remember looking at the car clock shortly after passing him. It was damn near exactly 1 a.m. when we passed him. We never saw a car, hell, a horse, any way for this sickly old pale miner to get into the park, nor any reason for him to be there. Worst of all, we estimated that this miner had to have been standing there facing us for at least an hour and a half, never moving. Not once did that light flicker as if he looked down for a moment or turned his head. He just stood there, staring down a road at a car full of dumbasses. We never saw him again. However, a couple of years ago, I decided to check to see if anyone experienced the same thing. I found one other story of a couple that saw him near where we did, standing there, staring late at night. As a man, I wish we would have stopped. Even if it would have been the most horrifying thing ever, I wish we would have stopped because honestly, I believe there was a ghost of a dead miner out in the park, and I would know for sure today. Okay, so I live in this pretty suburban town in Canada. However, just about a kilometre behind us is a huge forest country that is completely backwoods and super creepy at night. Anyway, there was a party in this backwoods town one night, so me and the boys decided to go. They left before I did, and the guy I was supposed to leave with ended up crashing there. My mum didn't want me to stay the night, so I called my sister and asked her to pick me up at the general store. So I left the house, and it was about a 5-kilometre walk to the store. I got lost in the woods, and the shit I saw that night was absolutely terrifying. There was no noise in the world at all, not even my footsteps made noise. Everything was dead silent. Oh, my phone was dead as well. But I'm not dumb, I knew that where the general store was, and it was east, so all I had to do was look for the North Star. This is where I started freaking out. I looked up in the sky, and there were no stars. Nothing. This wasn't because of light pollution, it's a backwoods town at 2 a.m. So I just kept walking, starting to freak the hell out. After walking through the woods for about an hour, I came across a clearing, but I stopped in my tracks when I saw a guy, like 10 feet in front of me. He was facing about 90 degrees away from me, and there was something with his face and body that was just wrong. It was like he was incomprehensible to me. I got a huge chill down my spine and just a sense of dread, like nothing I'd ever felt. Keep in mind, it was like 2 a.m, so there was no reason for this guy to be out here. I didn't want to stick around any longer, so I turned right back and ran straight through the woods for as long as I could. Eventually, I reached a dirt road and collapsed, and by some stupid luck, which I should not have been blessed with, I saw my sister's car pull up to me with a cop behind her. At this point, it was like 4 a.m. and they were searching for me for like 3 hours. I got in the car and cried until I got home. I've never been back to that town, nor do I have any plans to go back. Fuck that.